Hi, I warmly welcome you. This film needs an introduction. So, a few weeks ago on Facebook, I asked my fans if there are any interesting cars to record in Puławy, because I plan to visit Puławy often this summer. One of the first comments under that post led me straight to Kamil, who invited me to his garage, and that's how, a moment later, I was standing in a garage packed full of BMWs and Alpinas. So we agreed that we would record the first car and then see how it goes. Maybe this will turn into a series, and here is the first car we want to show you today, namely the Alpina B10. I won't reveal all the details because Kamil will tell you about them, but just a quick disclaimer at the beginning. Whenever Kamil says we, us, or our here, that's what he means. That's because Kamil's passion is German cars, specifically BMW and Alpina, and this passion is also his job. Because of that, he runs a company that deals with these cars, so let's get that out of the way right now. It's called Auto Bavaria, but that's not why we're here. I think Auto Bavaria doesn't need any advertising, neither in Puławy, where we're recording, nor anywhere else around here, so let's focus mainly on the Alpina. You're very welcome, thank you.
Hi, this is Kamil. It's a pleasure to be a guest on the Zakar OFF channel and to have him here with us in Puławy. And above all, it was a real pleasure to host him here at our place. As Zakar already mentioned, we deal with the BMW brand on a daily basis and with the majority of cars that we have here. Today we chose this exceptional car because I believe it's the most worthy of being talked about and presented to a wider audience. Most of you probably know the E39 model, but let's get that out of the way, so let's introduce this specific model. This is a BMW based on the E39, specifically the B10 model. Probably one of the most beautiful and popular Alpina models in a gorgeous and timeless sedan body. To briefly talk about this car, we need to present the origins of this model and explain why it is so special. Listen. First of all, this is an Alpina that was produced in the sedan version in only 858 units. This is unit number 522 out of 858 produced worldwide, so it's truly a very limited car, manufactured in very small series. To explain why this is an Alpina, we need to point out that it's not just any tuner. Many say Alpina is a tuner or that BMWs have Alpina packages, but that's not accurate. Alpina is a manufacturer that buys BMW bodies, as with the E39. They took it to their own factory, to a small factory in Buchloe, and in that factory the car was taken apart, reassembled, given a new vehicle identification number, and the car was called the BMW Alpina B10. Just like in this case, I'd like to tell you now how this particular example actually ended up in our hands and the story of how we found this car. This is a car that went to the Japanese market and was bought on the Japanese market by a certain collector in Germany. 4 years ago, this car joined a large collection in Germany, and while I was looking for a car for my client, I came across an ad for this exact car. Listen, I went to a guy who actually keeps cars in barns, in beautifully renovated barns in the countryside. He had cars like Ferrari, Porsche, Maserati, all kinds of Mercedes, Aufrecht, Melcher, Gross Asbach, and among them was this Alpina, the Alpina B10 model. This car has been my dream for years. So the moment I saw this car in that garage, the moment I was circling around it and checking its condition, I was quietly telling myself, Kamil, calm down, Kamil, calm down, Kamil, calm down. I knew I was going to take that car from there. I knew that even if I didn't negotiate a single euro cent, I would still take that car from there because it was in phenomenal condition. I had been hunting for that model for a very long time. Usually in Zakar OFF videos, you hear from the owners about the work that has been done, about the car, about the effort that was put in, the fixes and so on. I was lucky enough to buy a car that was close to perfection, and honestly, I didn't have to do anything to it at the start. And what you're seeing right here is exactly what I found in that German barn.
My dear friends, the partner of this episode is AUTODNA. The simplest and cheapest way to check a car's history before buying and avoid a mistake for just a few bucks. You can be sure that the car wasn't stolen, didn't have its odometer rolled back, and wasn't in an accident. I've mentioned this before, but I'll remind you again. According to research, over 40% of drivers had to fix issues after buying a car that were caused by its accident history, something they didn't know about before the purchase. Check its history first. There's an AutoDNA link in the video description. I highly recommend it. Don't buy blindly.
Under the hood, we have a real proper V8. It's a naturally aspirated V8, not turbocharged in any way, and its power isn't boosted by a supercharger either. What's more, Alpina bored out the 4.4 engine to a capacity of 4.6, and as a result achieved 347 horsepower. Listen, this is power coming from displacement, plus Alpina's software and the transmission software. Believe me, this car is insanely fast. To show you just how fast this car is. So imagine, compared to the E39 M5, which back then was a real killer with 400 horsepower, this car with an automatic transmission would do 0 to 100 in about half a second slower than the M5, but without a limiter, it reached a top speed 30 km/h higher. As of today, this car has just under 104,000 kilometers on the odometer. And just so you know, this car wasn't bought and just parked in a garage. I believe that every car like this should be driven. You buy a car like this not just to enjoy looking at it in the garage, but also to enjoy driving it. Especially a car with this kind of power and engine, and let me tell you, maintaining this car is not cheap at all. The initial service is very expensive, and above all, these cars require a skilled, experienced hand. We know that very few people can professionally take care of this type of engine. And let me tell you, I was lucky that the previous owner, that German guy I mentioned in that barn, did a major service on this car, which we would probably have had to do ourselves. But like I said, I was lucky. And in this car, the most expensive timing system was replaced, the most expensive variable Nockenwellensteuerung units, and the car was prepared for use. Now everyone will probably ask how much fuel it uses. Listen, it uses as much as you pour in, that's it. Or in other words, it depends on how heavy your foot is. But since I also drive this car, I've had the pleasure of taking it on more than one long trip. I was also at the Alpina meet in Poland. I had a chance to test this car, and I can tell you, you can keep it reasonable on the road. At highway speeds, it's around 12 to 13 liters per 100 kilometers, of course, driving at highway speeds, but within the legal limits in the city. I haven't checked the upper limit, but it's around 20 liters per 100 kilometers. Taking advantage of the fact that we have the hood up, I can show you what I already mentioned. So, what Alpina shamelessly did with the BMW vehicle identification number, crossing it out and giving it their own new unique vehicle identification number. The vehicle identification number always ended with the serial number of the given car, in this case 522. What has always fascinated me about Alpinas is the interior and the build quality of these cars. We know very well that cars from the late 90s and early 2000s were really made from excellent materials, but imagine that Alpina used even better materials. If we had fine wood as the dashboard finish, and we know that was very popular in the 90s, then Alpina used even better wood. Additionally, they would mark it with a small golden Alpina badge, which increased the prestige. The leather was always of the highest quality. Additionally, the blue and green stitching, Switchtronic, and all the equipment elements were definitely made from better materials. Also, this car was disassembled and reassembled. You can feel it while driving and using the car, especially when driving. You can tell that the car was assembled by hand because nothing creaks in this car. Everything happens in complete silence, and you can feel that build quality and the quietness of the ride. Alpina always focused on making sure we could cover fast miles in maximum comfort. The most important changes compared to a regular BMW, and what emphasizes that we're in a slightly better car, include the steering wheel with what's called Switchtronic. This was one of the first cars where you could control the gears using buttons located on the back of the steering wheel. The next quite important thing was the dials scaled up to 330 km/h with a blue background. I don't need to remind you that in the 90s, whenever we looked inside a car, we always checked the maximum speed on the dials. And imagine looking into a car that shows 330 km/h, that made a huge impression. The next thing, probably the most important thing that sets Alpina apart from regular BMWs, is the nameplate that every Alpina has. It contains information about the model we're sitting in, the engine, and the serial number, which is exactly what's included in the vehicle identification number. When I'm looking for Alpinas and checking them out, the first thing I always look for is exactly that nameplate. Even things like the floor mats weren't left in their original version, and Alpina added its characteristic two-tone stitching here. You could also have this stitching on the seats or just on the headrests, and in this case we have it on the headrests.
When I got in here, I thought, who cares if a 2-meter tall guy fits in the Alpina B10, but the 2-meter test has to come first. So I need to figure out which of these buttons I'm responsible for. Listen, I haven't been trained, but I think I know. Oh, now I moved forward. Oh, you can also pull the steering wheel out and up and closer. And with just 2 moves, I'm set up in relation to the steering wheel. Everyone noticed my little cap. I'm ready for today's video, right? And going back to the car, there's still a bit of space above my cap, so basically I don't have to slouch. I can go for a test drive here soon, which I can't wait for, and the back is fine too. Now sitting behind myself. I know that the BMW Series A5 is big only on the outside, and that's not just in the generation we're having the pleasure of testing today. And there's no exception here. You can see that I barely fit behind myself, if at all. It's a tight fit really, even when I move the driver's seat in front of me and for my feet as well. I'd say it's a squeeze, and there's not much space above my head either. I can't say that I have enough space here. The person sitting in the middle won't actually sit in the middle because I only see 2 seat belts here, not 3, so someone will have to sit in the middle anyway. Well, I don't envy them because the tunnel is so high and so wide, so that's really just an emergency seat. So the front is great, but the back is no good.
As always, we got a little carried away. We showed you under the hood, we showed you the interior, and we talked about the technical details. Here, the most important things occur outside. Because in reality, what characterizes Alpina and how we recognize Alpina is above all the color palette. Above all by the distinctive lower spoiler, which looks a bit like a snowplow, but with a beautiful Alpina inscription. That's what defines most, but not all Alpina models. Because the so-called deco set could be ordered, or you could stay anonymous and not order it. But for me, it's a must-have. Every Alpina has to have its deco set. In this case, the gold stickers emphasize that we're dealing with something special. Gold, but modest, as it was in the famous Polish movie. Not everyone likes it. For me, it's an element that highlights the entire style of Alpina and the whole Alpina line. It's a huge spoiler on the rear trunk. Every Alpina had this spoiler, and every Alpina had it just this big. Additionally, beautiful ellipses, a modified exhaust tip, always in the same style, always characteristic of Alpina, always emphasizing the sound of this car. And the highlight we have to mention is the rims. Rims that, listen, had a special lock, a lock that could only be opened with a key, and under this lock there are the bolts, and the valve for these rims is hidden. This is one of the most beautiful rims in history for me, of the BMW and Alpina brands. 2 widths, the perfect tire size, and the whole thing just, as they say, does the job.
And now we're going out for a test drive. We'll see how this car accelerates, how it sounds, and how it handles, because I think we'll do the moose test, right?
Listen, the car is in good hands.
And besides, let's be honest, if not Alpino, then who?
Exactly, this car can still surprise more than one person with how nicely it can pick up speed.
Before we evaluate how it drives, let's be honest, my review will be pretty superficial. I'll drive 2 kilometers before saying anything. Let's talk about things we know for sure, meaning your experience regarding the prices of these cars, because they've recently gone through quite an interesting, or maybe not so interesting, transformation. It depends on whether we want to buy, sell, or hold.
Tukto decided to buy such an Alpina literally 4 or 5 years ago, right before the pandemic. He made the deal of his life because literally 5 years ago, these cars on the German market were going for around 10 to 12,000 euros. And back then I was thinking, because the M5S were at similar prices, and I was wondering, damn, that's already a price for an Alpina where I probably can't afford it anymore. An Alpina should be more expensive, and imagine it's 2025 now, and to buy any good Alpina B10 you need at least 30,000 euros or more. Everything depends, of course, on the condition and mileage of the car, but prices have gone up drastically. Will they keep getting more expensive? I think so. I think that in times when we have so many electric cars, a naturally aspirated V8 really becomes a rarity. Considering that it's a limited edition, usually below 1,000 units, I think these cars are still a very good investment for the future.
Just like Bitcoin, since their number never changes. Exactly, there won't be more of them.
There won't be more.
So naturally, you could treat it like a work of art. It's painted once, a painting.
There won't be more made. When you drive this car, you have to realize you're driving one of 858 units.
It's likely even less, since you don't know the total over the years.
How many have survived?
Have already survived, made it through. It was a car, okay, not really for that kind of performance driving, because for me, Alpinas have always been associated with that kind of driving style, that they offer the full range of sporty capabilities, but they wrap it in such a thick layer of luxury that no matter how much power you have, it never provokes you. It always drives so effortlessly because it has plenty of power, but at the same time it's not aggressive and just lets you cruise, swallow up the miles, and basically doesn't tempt you to push it even though it could. Well, after a few years it really does have quite a few horses under the hood.
Listen, these cars have always belonged on the highway. Alpina had this motto to create the most luxurious car, the fastest possible, but not for the track, just for the highway. Cars, really. To this day, this car is 26 years old, and when I'm on the road driving it on the highway, that's when I really feel why it was created and how much power reserve it has. Even at high speeds, honestly, it doesn't stop at 100, 200. It reaches 300 kilometers per hour on the speedometer with no limiter, which was its edge over the M5 then.
Soon I'll do something for the first time, press the magic button under the steering wheel. And nothing happened. It was an important event in my life.
Now, to use this button, you have to move the lever to I. Now the M symbol lights up on your dashboard, and you can shift gears. Left for lower, right for higher.
Because my whole life I thought that since there's an up-down symbol embroidered here, there must be a button under this embroidery.
Ah, exactly.
And suddenly it turned out that it's actually on the exact opposite side, and listen, it works. I hereby declare that after pressing, the correct number actually jumps on the screen and the gear changes too. Although not in an extremely sporty way, just like in an automatic from those years.
Let's be honest, it was just a gadget. But considering that the first Alpinas were made in '96 and there was still Alpina B10 Switchtronic in '94, where you could shift gears from the steering wheel, it was really something absolutely new. Even then, Alpina still supplied its own software for these gearboxes. And it works much faster and more aggressively, but they're still really slow and took away a lot of our speed.
I just tried to downshift from fourth to second and it took as long as half the sentence you were saying. We can do it now, just like you used fourth gear, 1, 2.
He considered it and changed. That's how it works. He let you think about whether you really wanted to take that gear. He always gives you a choice, maybe a different gear after all. So these gearboxes weren't super fast, but again, they were durable.
Yes, 103 kilon, well, 103,000, so it must have been driven in Japan, because most of its life this car probably spent in Japan, right?
Yes, the car was in Japan for 22 years. During the car auction, for which we also have documents, the car was rated as 4A, which is one of the higher grades, and the car was in great condition with low mileage in its original paint. So it really had a very good reputation at the time it was bought. And this is where the smile begins. Respect that.
13.5, it only hits the red line really hard and then shifts and keeps it around 5. But it's interesting that from this lazy one, which responded to manual shifting very reluctantly, suddenly after a kickdown its character changed and it really downshifted hard. And it allowed itself to give you a real punch in the back.
A punch in the back. It did it, it did it. And what's cool about this car is how it doesn't run out of breath on the highway. And it's actually a really nice feeling that when you tap the gas while driving on the highway, this car doesn't change gear, but just starts accelerating. It has that kind of pull, like it has some extra turbo or supercharger, but it's all thanks to the software, transmission, and computer from Alpina.
I love transmissions like that, which give the engine trust with every slight touch of the gas pedal. They don't downshift, they just give it a chance to rev higher, to reach that target speed more naturally.
As I said, the power here comes from engine displacement, so there's no need to spool a turbo or activate a supercharger. Although a supercharger generally works with the engine revs and it responds much faster than a turbo, here the power comes from the displacement and it just kicks in. Yes, when you give it that much, when you step on the gas, just imagine the swirl in the fuel tank at the moment you press the accelerator. That's exactly the upper limit, which this car doesn't have. Imagine you're in a 26-year-old car with 103,000 kilometers on the clock. Tell me, what are your feelings about driving such a really old car? How do you feel behind the wheel? Do you get the impression that you're driving such an old car?
I think that, with all due respect to what the automotive industry has achieved so far, I mean, how advanced it was. That was 23 years ago. Engineers have never stopped innovating. And everything that was the best back then, and we absolutely do not deny it, it really was the best at that time. However, what appeared in the following years was even better and better, more and more. Today's cars are different, they're increasingly electric. The M5 looks the way it does, it weighs what it weighs, but still, progress, advancement, technically speaking, it's always with us. And of course, if someone doesn't like it, you could say that the automotive industry stopped in the 90s, let's say, the 90s, and then started changing in the wrong direction. And it kind of depends on which side you look at it from. I can agree with that too, because I remember that vibe, because I was in Germany at the time where nobody talked about anything else, only about what I would buy from the thick catalog for Volkswagen or Honda, the next part. And I remember that young people somewhere in the villages, because I used to visit friends there, in those villages young people would meet up with different cars, mostly Volkswagens. Back then they would talk about what's going on, what else they're going to do, what else they're going to buy. And those were times that are hard to repeat. You lease a car today, return it after 3 years, then get another one.
You take another one?
You take another one. And basically you use it much more than ever as a tool, not as an object you walk around and admire. So at this point cars are treated a bit more instrumentally, but also because their character has changed. And it's like even the 9th I arrived in, which may appear in the film's background once or twice. Well, what can you add to it? What can you replace in it? What can you upgrade in it? Since it's already good from the factory in many aspects, and in others there's nowhere to put your hand because everything is high voltage and you can't do anything.
In reality, you can only personalize your color scheme, like the ambient color you like, or choose your favorite color scheme inside.
So, like, car enthusiasts might even want to stand by these cars today and tinker with them, but honestly, nowadays they give us fewer chances than before. This automotive world is a bit different, and answering your question now from this perspective, it's like a completely different kind of automotive world. So when I drive, it's like I close my eyes and think about what I'm driving, and I really feel that I'm driving. But it's a car that, well, I don't want to say it's old, maybe not yet a classic, but it's already a bit outdated, definitely not technically up to date, and you can feel it, you really can. We'll do a test in a moment. Vorsha will probably show up too. So I approached this with full respect because what it was back then was absolutely a dream. And today, if someone wants to somehow capture those times, they buy a car like that for the garage, where it's 30,000 euros and they can walk around it and still do something with it, because new cars don't give you that. But that doesn't change the fact that most of the maneuvers we could do here with this car, if we put that much criticized M5 next to it, it will do it better, even though it's twice as heavy. So that's how it changed. It changed for the better and for the worse. You can't really say that it was good just because it changed only for the better. If that were the case, nobody would be interested in this car today.
Of course.
Because those were just development stages leading to the great cars we have today. But today's cars are just so different that we can take care of them knowing that we're not doing it in vain. Because it's really a stage worth preserving since things change too much afterward. Now we're going for the moose test. Let's say
that I'll adjust the seatbelt, check it, and pull it out for a moment.
A bit more.
I'll grab the handle.
I'm a rather moderate optimist. I think this car will manage, but I suppose it won't be as elegant as it would be today. Well, I don't know. I don't want to say Skoda Fabia, but let's say a modern car. I suppose it would handle a bit better.
It's also worth mentioning that back then, a regular E39 had a 15-inch wheel and a tire width of 205. However, in this Alpina, we have 18-inch wheels in two sizes. At the back, for those times, a massive 265, and at the front, 235. Plus, of course, Alpina modified the suspension, so they lowered it a bit, so I'm not worried.
Having a car like this, you really do have a problem in your business, because on one hand, the business is about buying a car and then selling it, but on the other hand, you get attached to some cars and in reality you sell them just so you don't have to sell them.
You know, these are also the kind of cars that in a way were dreams. Actually, the story of Alpina in my case is that a dozen or so years ago, I dreamed of my first Alpina. But these cars were unavailable, they weren't on the market, or they were very expensive, considering the reality we lived in. And the first Alpina B10, or more precisely a B10 replica, I built myself, and it was 1-to-1. It looked like an Alpina. A lot of the interior parts were from Alpina, and it was hard to tell that it wasn't a real Alpina. However, beneath the surface, it was simply the classic 2.8. My love for Alpina began with building the first one myself, and only later.
I don't have any problems anymore.
I have
photos. And did you say something about that twin bioturbo with diesel? That's an interesting story too.
Yes.
We'll do the moose test in a moment, and just in a moment. And also that story with the D10. Oh.
Few people know this model existed.
All right, we have 50 empty road, 50, we're going a bit too fast. Yeah, slow down. Oh, now it's 50. Oh, but it's sneaking up on that speed.
You don't feel the speed.
Oh, Jesus, much better than I expected. I thought something might happen. You never know.
It's stable.
But the car's in good shape.
It's in
shape. Nothing happened. Just like that. And it's not that I'm turning and it's going straight, but it really turned, it really came back. It went around this, let's say, obstacle. Done. There's nothing more to say.
Bravo.
D10.
Yes, D10, listen, because here we're talking about the B10C, and not many people know that there was also a model called the D10, and I had that D10. It's a car that's a challenge for your wallet because Alpina basically rebuilt everything in it when it comes to the engine. For example, the engines in the B10C were also installed in the X5 with the IS designation, meaning they were in regular BMWs and parts were available. The Alpina D10 had an M57 engine, a 3-liter diesel completely rebuilt from A to Z. There, the pulley, injectors and accessory components were all modified by Alpina, and in general you could say Alpina was kind of a guinea pig for the development. Then BMW with the designation 535D, which is a 3-liter biturbo diesel, where the small turbo powered the bigger turbo. Now imagine the D10 as a precursor to this idea, had 2 turbos in series, both boosting simultaneously. Driving this car was, for me, comparable to flying a plane. When we were speeding down the road and hitting the gas, it wouldn't downshift, but those 2 turbos would suck in a huge amount of air, and like a plane, it would accelerate at tremendous speed. A major downside of these cars was that their engines overheated and exploded. And now imagine that there were 151 sedans and 51 Tourings made, so we have about 200 to 202 units in the world. On German forums, it's said that about 30% of these Alpinas had the real Alpina engine, while the rest already had a regular 3-liter diesel because those engines just exploded. Personally, when driving this car, I always had it in the back of my mind not to push it to 100% of its capabilities, because I was afraid that the engine could fail at any moment. Very few of them were made, and they sometimes appear in German listings. I was considering whether to buy another car like this to keep it, because it's something that will never happen again. So it's really like an airplane in the form of a 3-liter diesel with 2 huge turbines working at the same time.
But is it more expensive or cheaper because of that? Is it more expensive because it's so unique, not a flop, but still unique? Or is it cheaper because the mine under the hood is cheaper?
Is it cheaper? I had a unit that I also hunted down in Germany, which was my personal unit, and I always took care of it. Besides, I did a whole lot of work on it for myself. And every time I got into that car and drove off, I was scared, just plain scared, and that's the only reason I sold that car. Interestingly, the car ended up with a collector in Lithuania, and you can also find a video about this car on YouTube where its amazing condition is praised. And exactly what I'm talking about, how that D10 drove on the road, you could really feel the pull. Just imagine, the D10 pulled even better at speeds of 100, 120 and even more.
Interesting. Maybe someday I'll get the chance to drive one of those too.
I recommend it. They're in Poland, and there are a few enthusiasts in Poland who have a very well-maintained D10, and one guy has a really amazingly modified one. Around 500, Wojtek has one. Wait, not a D10, I think Wojtek just has a D3. His wife used to drive one as a daily car, literally. By the way, I also have a D3 in my garage.
Exactly, that's right. This potentially opens up, of course, the story for our next recordings, but maybe let's take it easy. We'll release this video, see, listen, read what you have to say in the comments, and if you're interested in more episodes, let us know. And when I'm back in Puławy, if Kamil agrees, of course, I can come here with cameras and show one more, or actually 2 more cars from his collection. Kamil, thank you very much for representing the car. An amazing story, an amazing vehicle. It was a real pleasure to be able to take a ride in it. Thank you all as well for watching this episode. Remember to subscribe and see you in the next videos. Thanks. Bye.